Home, home on the range. Hello, everyone. What camera are we? There's my camera. How are you? Happy Wednesday. It's Wednesday. This video was supposed to be up on Monday. But then again, last week's Thursday video was supposed to be up on Monday as well. So we're getting next week's Tuesday, week after that. Hey, we did it. Oh, I forgot to start the timer. Boom. I'm Ian. Today we're using the timer. Goal for the length of the podcast today is 10 minutes. However, I do have some notes and a couple of acknowledgments. We're a couple days late. I think this whole podcast thing, I'm letting this thing become something I'm kind of fearful and apprehensive about. And since it starts the week, in my experience so far, this is 2 weeks in a row now that it has kind of ended up blocking the rest of my goals for the week. My friend Ryan is my longtime bestie. One of my longtime besties. Martins tend to have hetero life mates for life. You make friends with this guy, you better make sure it's what you want, because it's going to be around for a while. Anyway, and I got to officiate my buddy's wedding a couple weeks ago, one of the great honors of my life. Yay! More free association podcast ranting. Okay, so anyway, we call that a black hole task. A black hole task, and I am reading for this, is something you need to get done that you don't want to do. But because you're putting off that thing you need to get done, nothing else gets done instead. And it's a behavior, or it's a pattern, it's something that I've noticed most of my life. You know, I need to do laundry, but it's all the way over there. But then I don't do anything fun or productive instead, because I'm like, well, I can't have fun. I can't go play video games. I can't, go hang out with friends, because I'm supposed to be doing laundry. So I don't do anything. I waste time on the internet. I watch YouTube videos. I've been watching a ton of Good Mythical Morning. Those two guys are becoming one of my inspirations. It's nice to know other 40-year-olds that are doing this, but are at the sort of pinnacle of the whole thing. Anyway, Vlog Brothers also. So I can't really afford to let that happen. This is now 2 weeks of me just sort of being fearful and just not getting this thing done, and I want this thing to happen. So, and the other thing too is, as of right now, I'm not bothering to publicize this podcast on the channel or on social media. So the work that I'm doing for this is not even yet. You may be listening to this at a point after which I decided to do that. But the work that I'm doing for this isn't really putting food on the table. This is just something I'm doing to make myself better and to get better at a skill that currently I don't make money off of. And that's great, but it can't be a black hole task that blocks everything else. So I just kind of need to get on top of this, let it be. It is what it is. I suppose it's just the same mental blocks that I'm always talking about when in regards to the channel is, when I was thinking about this week and talking with Jack about it. When you make something for public consumption, I wonder if there's a spectrum range where on one end you are sort of completely insulated from criticism through either confidence or ego or whatever it may be, and just sort of totally secure. And at the other end, you're sure that everything you're putting out is crap. And that's generally kind of more the range that I tend to fall in. I'm just being honest here. It's gotten better over 5 years for sure. What's interesting is I think when I started, when I first made Why You Should Watch Buffy, I was more I mean, I was really, really proud of a lot of those early videos. But I also hadn't done work in a long. Sorry about that. Note to self: mute. I also hadn't done work in a long time, and then and I didn't have an audience. So once those factors started to compound, and I started to see, like, I don't know, I can get that. By the way, I figured just for the visual background, I would, if you're watching this on YouTube and not listening to the audio version, the background is just the last video that I did for the channel. Anyway, the whole point, like, one of the things about the podcast is sort of getting over that mental block of, I don't want to, maybe it might not be good, I don't want to, I'm not going to have anything to say, it's going to be awkward, whatever. And, mostly that's just a matter of putting those thoughts down. It's almost like the exercise of everything that just kind of relates to letting go so often. The exercise of doing this thing that I find very confronting is very much a matter of, you can't quell those thoughts with more thought. You just cannot. I can't think my way out of a funk. I can't defeat the thought with thought. It's really just a matter of, okay, sit down, let go, start speaking. If it's not working, pretend that you're speaking to a particular friend. Hello, Ryan, Jess, Jack, Audrey, Dad. Either way, I've successfully managed to chorify this thing, and like any video that I make for the channel, this whole deal needs to be imbued with stuff that I either find fun or care about, or it's just not going to happen. So I'm going to try and experiment a little bit on that note, and loosen up some of the restrictions that I set up last week. And so I may bring some friends in from time to time just to have a chat, to talk about particular topics or whatever, and I want to try and look for things to make this not only entertaining for you guys, but fun for me, and something that I look forward to sitting down and doing. Besides the accountability aspect of it. Is that offensive? Using the, was accountability a term before South Park? I need to stop saying, before South Park used it. So for those of you who don't know, there's an episode of South Park where I think Screech gets sent to, what are those called? Gay cure camps. And it's a horrifying nightmare, of course. And at the beginning of it, they assign him an accountability buddy, which the job of the accountability buddy is to prevent each other from indulging in naughty urges, which, of course, the whole thing, never mind. Anyway, I just wonder if I just like the term. I think it's a cute term. I don't really associate it with that episode. Okay. So, yay, we've babbled more than half the time away. If we go over, we go over, but the goal is just to hit 10 minutes. So, checking in on goals for last week. First goal was work on Bushwhacked. I thought about working on Bushwhacked. Second goal, this was, now, I suppose in defense to me, I posted this on Thursday, but this is part of my issue with balance and all of that, is just managing, keeping my balls in the air. That doesn't sound right. Goal number 2: send or respond to 5 dating messages. I use OkCupid and Match. The funny part is, if you get me to subscribe to your service, I'm the dream whale. I'm the one who signs up for the membership and then forgets that he has it and doesn't sign in for weeks. I think I paid for a year of Match and didn't log in once. Yeah. Note to self: don't do that. So yeah, OkCupid match. I received a couple of messages according to notifications. Did not open it up. Just being accountable here. And third goal was go to the gym 2 times. 30 minutes of cardio each time. So those were the goals for last week. Didn't do any of those. No excuses. Just didn't do them. So I'll cover a couple of things here, but I have just been in the midst of a stalled out, apathetic funk, and there's nothing really to say about it. Oh, there we go, 10 minutes. Hey, easier than I thought. I would describe last week as comfortable apathy. But yeah, not so much this week, especially as I've gotten farther and farther between video releases. This week I need to get Nerd Shipper done. It's supposed to be up today. We'll see if that happens. I have a good idea. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a little while, and I think it sort of fits in the conversation, or what that series has evolved to be for my end of the conversation. Nerd Shipper Saturday is the Patreon Hangout. We're talking about the next 2 Buffy episodes in Season 4, Living Conditions, and I should know the third one. Fear Itself, I think. Doesn't sound right. And then, of course, just Bushwhack needs to get done, you know. It's funny, whenever I've talked to a few of my friends who do YouTube stuff or have their own Patreons, and inevitably, at the beginning of every month, you drop Patreon donors. And that's natural, you know. People, let me go ahead and the visual version hide. Oh, yeah, we're fine. You know, people's financial circumstances change. People, you know, you might be the gym membership that they were subscribed to that they forgot about. This, that, and the other thing. But of course, I think it's inevitably human to make it about yourself and wonder if, you know, you weren't working hard enough, or you didn't do enough, put enough content out. This, that, and the other thing. You know, that's human. I've expressed these ideas not as truth, but just sort of sharing the grout of my mental space. So the first of the month rolled around. I haven't logged into Patreon yet because I'm just sort of like, I need to get more work done. So that's what's next. So update on Bushwhack, nothing for right now. What did I do this weekend? Signed up for the Criterion channel. Part of the idea of balance that I was talking about last week, the idea of keeping things, you know, having a hobby outside the channel, which maybe this podcast is until it becomes a part of the channel. That's interesting. That's a more healthy, productive way to look at it than a chore. But you know, now that I've made my hobby my job, I just need to sort of balance some things out. And to that end, but the other thing is, I think that anyone in my position who fancies themselves someone who talks about art and the way it connects to us personally and why it matters and all of that, you know, it kind of behooves you to keep broadening your palette and consuming good stuff. And I'm pretty myopic. You know, I tend to focus on stuff I'm watching for the channel or decompression content. You know, I love Good Mythical Morning, but you know, that kind of YouTube content would kind of fall under that thing. So I signed up for the Criterion channel. I've had a project in mind for a couple of years now called My List of Shame, which is defined as all of the content that when you tell someone you haven't seen it, they go, "You haven't seen," fill in the blank. And a lot of that stuff is on Criterion. So that'll be one of the goals for next week, actually. Let's go ahead and write that down. Goals. We're going to do a Criterion film. Weird goal number 2. Are you now or have you ever been? Yeah, we'll go ahead and play. Weird goal number 2. I kind of want to play more video games. Now, hear me out. Part of what I'm a big fan of artistic experiences in video games. That sounds a little pretentious, but, things like Journey, Last of Us 2 is coming out next year, and I'd love to play through the first one again. But I don't make time for long gaming experiences to get into a story or get into a good long RPG or any of that. I tend to play a lot of Dota. So, because it doesn't require that same kind of investment, and I won't have that experience of playing 10 hours of a game and then taking 2 months off and coming back to it and going, what the hell was I doing? Dota 2 is a MOBA. It's very addictive. It has consumed thousands of hours of my time and helps parts of my personality I'm not particularly happy about emerge. I'd share my Steam handle if I wasn't ashamed of myself. So no. So I'd like to, goals for the week, put a good 5 hours into a new game. Goal number 3, get caught up on video content, which means by Monday, and this is a tall order, publish book Bushwhacked, and then you've got the Patreon Hangout and Nerd Chipper. I think the Nerd Chipper should roll off pretty easy, though. I finally have what I consider a clean idea. And then I'm going to apply the same goals as last week, since none of them got done. So we'll go 2 times, where I'm going to lower the number of events in the amount of time. 2 times at the gym, 30 minutes of cardio, and then say 4 messages. All right. It's pretty warm in this room. I'm in a about 115 square foot bedroom, which is also my office. This is an i9 computer with a 2080, so it pumps out heat, and then this room gets sun on both sides. So until my roommate finishes the basement and there is an office to go to, unfortunately, we're just going to have to put up with the noise. All right, so today I wanted to end with a reading. At 24, Dean Winchester was finally beginning to accept the fact that his life was a mess. He had come out to California 3 weeks ago to deal with a poltergeist in San Diego and had ended up staying, picking up hauntings and missing persons cases as he slowly wound his way up the coast. Nothing big or world-ending, just small salt and burn deals. If Dean was being honest with himself, which usually only happened in the middle of a hunt or after a 6-pack of beer, he was dawdling, trying to make up his mind whether or not to keep driving to Palo Alto, drop in on Sam. It had been just over a year since his little brother had stormed off to Stanford after a screaming match with Dad. Dean had lost track of the number of drunken voicemails he'd left on Sammy's phone, of the number of times he or John had debated driving out to visit Sam. A year since Sam left, and a month since his dad took off on an unspecified case of his own, calling every couple days or so. After an encounter with the particularly vindictive ghost who had knocked over a telephone pole nearly on top of him, Dean stopped by a bar on the east side of L.A. that he'd found the night before. It was Western-themed, with wooden saloon doors that swung open, John Wayne posters on every wall, and a jukebox playing a perpetual mix of Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, Loretta Lynn, and Johnny Cash. If Sammy or his dad were around, Dean would have avoided the place like the plague. On his own, since the drinks were cheap, the pool table in the back room was level, and the bartender was almost hot enough to have modeled for Playboy. He could put up with a little classic country. He was partway through beer number 2, and relaxation was starting to sink in. A beer and a half wasn't near enough to make Dean's head fuzzy, but it took the edges off the nasty things at the back of his mind. He could let go of Sam a little easier, stop worrying about his dad's new obsession, and inspect the group of people who had just walked in. The girl at the front was short, blonde, and generally Dean's type, but there was something pinched in her face, and she had linked arms with a guy in an eye patch. Seriously? An eye patch? Who did he think he was, a pirate? Mentally shaking his head, Dean continued his survey of his newcomers. A nerdy redhead and a hot brunette followed the blonde and the pirate, but they were holding hands, so they were out. The lesbian couple was trailed by a few girls with wide eyes and high-pitched voices who were glancing around the bar and at Dean, like it was all incredibly exotic. It was the last woman who really caught his attention. Dark hair, dark eyes, heavy amounts of eyeliner and mascara, red lipstick, skin-tight clothes. She followed her friends into the bar, gave the room a board once over, and then ditched the group to head purposefully his way. She slid onto the bar stool next to Dean and held out her hand. "Hi, I'm Faith." Dean. Her grip, strong and calloused, surprised him. He had been expecting something a little less aggressive, a little more feminine. "Nice to meet you, Dean." Faith grinned at him, brown eyes bright and friendly. She gestured to the bartender. "Shot of whiskey, please." I glanced toward him. "Can I get you anything?" He raised his half-full bottle. "I'm good for now, thanks. Later, though, I might take you up on that. Looking forward to it. Cheers." Faith picked up the shot glass seconds after the bartender placed it in front of her. She threw her head back and downed the whiskey in one go, then gestured for another. "So, Dean, tell me, what brings you to the City of Angels?" That is a selected reading from Synchronicity by Authoressinhiding. Dean Winchester only knows one person, as screwed up as he is. She calls herself a vampire slayer. There's just one problem. Aren't vampires extinct? Starts pre-Supernatural, post-Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and runs through Supernatural Season 8. And I'll include a link to that in the show notes. All right, everyone. That is it for today. The next podcast will be up on Monday. Probably.